It is the winter of 1932 in a coal town in Kentucky. A mother stands at the stove with one sack of potatoes. That sack costs less than a quarter, and it is all she has. Tonight, it will feed her husband and their 6 children. Nobody at that table will go to bed hungry for millions of American families. The potato was not a side dish. It was breakfast, it was supper, it was survival itself. These are 25 forgotten potato dinners our grandmothers swore by. We begin with the simplest of them, all fried potatoes and onions. Thin sliced potatoes and onion rings laid in a skillet of saved bacon grease. Grandmother let them sit untouched until a deep golden crust formed the potatoes, drank up that smoky fat, and turned into something wonderful. Across Ohio, Indiana, and the hollows of West Virginia, this was Wednesday supper. No meat on the plate, and no one at the table felt poor. Next came watered potato soup, the cheapest hot meal a person could make. A few diced potatoes, an onion, salt, pepper, and a pot of plain water. She simmered it until the potatoes broke down and thickened the broth themselves. The starch made its own creaminess with no milk required at all. A widow in Missouri could feed her whole family for pennies. Then there were grated potato pancakes brought by immigrant grandmothers. Polish, German, and Jewish families grated raw potato for supper. Squeezed dry, bound with an egg, and fried until the edges went lace crisp. The smell of them frying pulled the children in from the yard. A few potatoes and 1 egg fed an entire family. Here is a supper so humble it never made it into a cookbook. When grandmother boiled potatoes, she never poured out the water. That cloudy, starchy water became the base for a pale, savory gravy. Poured over torn slices of day-old bread, it became dinner in farmhouses across Iowa. This fed children on the nights before payday. Understand why the potato mattered more than almost any other food. No crop on earth gave a poor family more calories for less money. A single acre of potatoes fed more people than an acre of grain. They grew in bad soil and cold ground that killed other crops. And they stored for months in a cellar without ever spoiling. The Irish, who fled the famine, knew exactly what the potato meant. To them it was the line between eating and starving that knowledge crossed the ocean and settled into kitchens everywhere. Now, to the meal that felt like Sunday even on a Tuesday, scalloped potatoes sliced thin and layered with flour, butter, and milk baked slow for an hour until the top browned and the sauce thickened. The poor man's version had no cheese and it needed none. No Midwestern church supper was ever complete without a pan of it. Then came potato and salt pork stew, the meal that built the working class. A chunk of cured salt pork rendered until the fat ran, and crisped diced potatoes and onions simmered in it until the broth turned silky. Salt pork cost about 12 cents a pound and lasted for weeks, served with cornbread. Crumbled right into the bowl, it beat back the winter. Do not laugh at boiled potatoes with butter and salt for families in the leanest years. This was a real supper. A pot of small potatoes boiled in their skins and eaten hot, a scrape of butter, a heavy pinch of salt, and nothing else. In Appalachia, a little buttermilk poured over the top made it feel like more. The Irish grandmothers never forgot Colcannon, and it fed families for 100 years. Boiled potatoes, mashed with butter, then folded through with soft cabbage, a mountain of creamy, green-flecked mash that cost next to nothing. A well of melted butter in the center for dragging each forkful through comfort and thrift, living in the very same bowl. Nothing in grandmother's kitchen was ever wasted, least of all leftover mash. The next morning, that cold mash became golden, crispy potato cakes mixed with an egg, shaped by hand and fried until each side crackled. She did not call it reducing waste. She called it not wasting good food. Here's what the food industry does not want you to think about. These dinners cost almost nothing because there is no money in them. No company runs a television commercial for a raw onion. So they sold the potato back to us as frozen fries and boxed flakes marked up 10 times over and dressed up as something new. Your grandmother knew the truth all along. A potato, a little fat, and a fire were all it ever took. If one meal defined the hardest years, it was potato soup with evaporated milk. Potatoes simmered soft, then some mashed right in the pot to thicken it. A can of evaporated milk, about 9 cents, turned it creamy without cream. Soft enough for the old, cheap enough for the poor, filling for the young. This soup fed more families than any relief program ever did. When there was a little cheese, grandmother made poor man's cheesy potatoes. Often the block of government cheese from the relief lines layered with potatoes and milk baked until golden and bubbling. The dark chewy corners were the pieces everyone reached for first. A can of corned beef became a diner breakfast in her hands. Diced potatoes fried crisped the beef, broken and pressed flat into a crust. A fried egg on top, and supper was on the table. One small can stretched across a whole family of hungry mouths. The German and Czech grandmothers made potato dumplings light as air-riced potato flour and egg rolled into balls and dropped in broth. They floated up when they were done, soft and pillowy and warm. Sunday dinners across the German belt were built around them. In late summer, when the garden was heavy, came the potato and green bean pot, snapped beans, potatoes, onion, and a ham bone simmered slow for hours. The beans went silky, and the potatoes thickened the pot liquor, a whole meal in one pot, made from what the garden gave for free. When grandmother had a little ground beef, she made it feed twice as many cottage pie, a thin layer of beef hidden under a blanket of mash. Baked until the potato top turned golden and crisped at the edges, a pound of beef fed 6 because the potato did most of the work. Here is what nobody says out loud about these meals. They were an act of love made by women who were bone-tired. A grandmother peeling potatoes with hands that ached night after night. She took the humblest thing in the kitchen and made it say, "You are cared for." That is the real reason these recipes survived at all. The Italian grandmothers turned potatoes into a pasta that cost pennies, poor man's gnocchi, mashed potato and flour rolled into little pillows, boiled for a single minute, then tossed with a thin tomato sauce. Restaurants now sell a plate of them for the price of a family supper. When flour was dear, grandmother stretched it with potato bread. Mashed potato worked into the dough made a loaf that rose taller and stayed moist. Some used the leftover potato water in place of milk, wasting nothing. Thrift baked right into a tender, faintly sweet loaf. Before all the modern toppings, a baked potato was a supper on its own, buried in the coals of the wood stove until the skin went crackling crisp. Split open, filled with drippings saved from Sunday's roast, the crisp skin, salty and chewy, was always eaten last. In the South, where cornmeal cost half of wheat flour, cane potato, cornbread, mashed potato in the batter made it moist and stretched it to fill the skillet. A wedge crumbled into a bowl of beans was a full supper kitchen. Wisdom passed from mother to daughter by watching and by doing. Here is the one mothers were almost ashamed to serve potato water gravy over biscuits made when there was no meat at all. Just grease flour, and the cloudy water the potatoes had boiled in, there was a quiet magic in it, a real meal made from what most threw away. Then there were hobo potatoes, the everything in one pan meal, potatoes, onion, and whatever scrap of meat the week had left behind. A little bologna, a leftover sausage all cooked into one savory tangle. No two nights ever tasted exactly the same. And at the very top of this list, a pot of stewed potatoes and milk so plain that naming it almost feels like a letdown. Potato chunks simmered soft, finished with milk, and a pat of butter, salt, pepper, and nothing else in the whole world. In coal towns and Dust Bowl farmhouses, this appeared when everything else was gone. It was not a meal of defeat. It was survival made warm and creamy in a bowl. Your grandmother made it without a recipe, the way her mother had. Before her, it kept whole towns alive through winters that should have broken them. So make one of these, this week, just one, then tell me if your grandmother was only being frugal, or if she knew something the rest of us have quietly forgotten. Because a sack of potatoes and a little love could feed a family through anything. Your grandmother knew, and now so do you.